Happy Tuesday, June 11th, everyone. Welcome back to Weather on the Go, all your weather coverage. And in today's weather forecast, we are talking about excessive heat building across the middle and eastern two-thirds of the United States, along with a ring of fire pattern that will bring severe thunderstorms to the northern United States over the next several days. We're also talking tropics on the video, so make sure if you are new here to Weather on the Go to make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Hit the subscribe button down below. We cover southern Canada, the United States, and the tropics every single day on this channel. Also be sure to leave a like down below if you like today's weather forecast. Leave any comments, questions, and concerns below. We'll get to those later on today. Let's look at the morning temperatures we started off with here this morning. We saw some mild conditions across the middle of the country. The warmest air out of all 50 states was in Florida this morning, where we started off in the upper 70s to lower 80s. Look at that, 82 there in Miami, Florida this morning. We have extreme heat building across the desert Southwest. We have heat advisories here in the orange across the Sacramento Valley, even parts of the northern Sacramento Valley here with excessive heat warnings in the pink. That extends even down into the Las Vegas area, into the Phoenix region, even excessive heat watches in the maroon reds extending down into southern New Mexico and far west Texas, where we are anticipating some extreme heat over the next several days. Here is the culprit. We have a very strong ridge of high pressure. We have a lot of sinking air, so that means a lot of heat will be building here, where you see the reds in the desert Southwest into the Four Corners region, into Nevada, into California here. That's where the main heat wave is so far. And this afternoon, those high temperatures out there will be well into the 90s, if not the triple digits. 106 there into Phoenix, 102 into the Las Vegas area. And we're into the 102 range into southeastern Arizona as well, and even into the Rio Grande Valley in southern Texas this afternoon. It's definitely going to be hot temperatures around 100 to 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Notice up here into the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, the Northeast, we're a lot cooler. That trough that we've been seeing as of late will continue as we go into this afternoon, bringing us highs into the 60s and 70s. So very pleasant conditions there. And looking at the heat index, the hottest temperatures here will be down near the Gulf Coast. Look at that, the Rio Grande Valley, like Brownsville, Texas, Victoria, Texas, up toward Corpus Christi and Houston, even over here to Lake Charles, Louisiana, near the coast. We're going to be seeing heat index values around 100 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit this afternoon. Now, we did have some active storms yesterday on the severe weather front. We had some damaging winds across portions of the western Dakotas, a couple damaging wind reports, even a couple tornado reports there into the western Texas region, and a couple of damaging wind and hail reports across the southeast coast there from Alabama into southern Georgia, southern and coastal South Carolina here as well, and just off the coast as well. So a very busy day yesterday. That will continue as we go into today in a couple of areas. We got instability down near the Gulf Coast and up through the plains, and that will lead to a couple pockets of severe weather as we do go into this afternoon. Very isolated, though, is going to be the coverage of showers and storms, the highest coverage of which will likely be down here in west central Texas, west of the San Antonio and Houston area. And you can see as we go into the afternoon, there's that cluster of showers and storms mid-late afternoon here, where you can see some of those damaging wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour, some quarter-size hail out there, maybe an isolated tornado threat that will propagate further south and east. But other than that, a couple pockets in the upper Midwest or in the Rockies that could see some stronger storms, but really isolated coverage going into this evening. And a lot of us will actually be dry as we go into the sunrise time frame on early Wednesday morning. And speaking of Wednesday, the heat will continue to build across portions of the Four Corners region. That will continue as we go into Thursday and Friday. Friday, the heat starts to elongate more across the central and southern plains and toward the lower Mississippi Valley by late in the week. So let's look at those temperatures on Wednesday. Tomorrow, we're into the 90s across most of the Great Plains. A couple 90-degree readings up here towards Chicago, Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And then as we go into Thursday, there's going to be a boundary that's going to set up here. Cooler air to the north of that boundary across the northern plains, upper Midwest, and upper Great Lakes region, while south of the boundary is where all the instability will be, with temperatures soaring into the 90s and even triple digits here into the central plains centered across Kansas. Then as we go into Friday, there's that boundary again. North of it, cooler weather. South of it, a lot of heat, and that heat wave does persist as we go into Friday. Looking at this here, there's all the heat you can see in the orange, but we're going to watch a trough that's going to be building in across the Canadian prairies by tomorrow on Wednesday, June 12th, and that's going to be diving east-southeastward into the upper Great Lakes region and in through Ontario, Canada by Thursday, and then by Friday that enters into interior New England and Quebec up here into eastern Canada as we go into Friday. And look at all the heat building further to the west of that. With that heat building and that trough coming in is going to spell trouble in the form of severe weather on Wednesday. We have some instability up here into the northern plains, central plains, and even the upper Midwest. The highest instability up here into Minnesota. And that is where we do have a slight risk for severe weather. This is currently a level 2 out of 5 risk on the risk scale from portions of Wisconsin back through Minnesota, northern Iowa, eastern South Dakota, and a very small portion of northeastern Nebraska as we go into Wednesday. Wednesday afternoon, we're going to see scattered supercells developing across the upper Midwest, especially centered across Minnesota. Those storms will grow upscale into a complex of thunderstorms that will produce more damaging winds and hail versus a tornado threat. I think the tornado threat will go down as we go further into the evening, and the damaging wind hail threat will go up as we go deeper into Wednesday. That complex of storms, where it propagates is a little uncertain, but it may drop southeast into Iowa or may kind of continue more on an eastern trajectory into Wisconsin and northern Illinois. That's a little bit uncertain right now. We'll keep you updated on that. And then that boundary is going to shift a little bit further south once we go into Thursday. So that complex of storms we see tomorrow night will actually shift that boundary a little further south. There's the instability focused across the Central Plains, the mid-Missouri Valley over here towards central Illinois. That's where we do have that slight risk of severe weather, again in a level 2 out of 5 on the risk scale from eastern Kansas into north central Missouri and west central Illinois. But that general marginal risk extending all the way back into Wyoming, Colorado, and even through Michigan as we go into the day on Thursday. Here we go Thursday afternoon, scattered storm development all along that front. As that front moves south into that instability, it's going to be able to lift that air up and rise, and we're going to see thunderstorms and then maybe another convective system, a line of storms trying to develop Thursday evening, again with damaging winds, hail, and a couple tornadoes possible. And then here we go on Friday. We got more instability. That frontal boundary will shift a little bit further to the south. Right now, Friday doesn't have any outlook days for severe weather so far, but I think this could be a marginal or slight risk day of severe weather as we get closer. We have more storms there in the lower Ohio River Valley into the Tennessee Valley, and then more storms firing up back here in the western plains. That could lead to another complex of storms for places like South Dakota, Nebraska, and Kansas as we go into Friday evening. So a very active weather pattern over the next few days. Here are your rainfall amounts through Friday night through June 14th, and you can see the heaviest of which will be in their northern states up here into the upper Midwest, into the high plains, into the central plains areas. There will be some areas down into Texas, especially western and northwestern Texas, that get some wet weather as well. And then look at Florida. Some tropical moisture down here could bring double-digit rainfall totals for places like Fort Myers, Naples, the Key West area, over here into Fort Lauderdale, Daytona Beach, even the Miami Beach area as we go in towards Friday night. Some rainfall totals locally up to 15 inches in some of these areas, so some significant flash flooding will be possible there in southern Florida. Heading into Father's Day weekend, this is Saturday, June 15th, into Father's Day Sunday, June 16th. You can see a ridge of high pressure that would be into the western U.S. will shift east into the eastern U.S. and replace our weather pattern with a trough across the west and the Pacific Northwest. So a big pattern change on the way for Father's Day weekend, and that will mean cooler temperatures now for the Cascades up here into the Pacific Northwest. So places like Seattle and Portland and Eugene, the Medford area will start to cool down. Same thing up here into British Columbia and Alberta, Canada. And then all the heat we see out west on Saturday will shift east across the Mississippi River Valley and into the eastern two-thirds of the country for Father's Day. And you can see those temperatures on Saturday here to start Father's Day weekend. Pretty hot down here, a lot of 90s across portions of the southern U.S. Those heat index values into the triple digits across the Carolinas, into Georgia, Florida, all the way across Dixie Alley here toward the southern plains. Then as we go into Father's Day Sunday, that heat starts to build further north and east toward the Ohio Valley, the Great Lakes, and upper Midwest. A lot of these areas that haven't been hot so far will get into the 90s as we go into Sunday, and heat index values climbing well into the 90s to the north and triple digits again all across the south and the southeastern U.S. for Father's Day itself. Now, precipitation trends through that weekend time frame, we are going to see some active weather. That ring of fire pattern we talk about, it's where we have a lot of heat building across the south and southeast, and it feeds off of the instability and energy from all of that heat on the northern and northeastern periphery, and you can see we're going to see these complexes of storms Saturday, Sunday, and likely even beyond Father's Day as we go into next week start to evolve across the northern U.S., and this could bring rounds of severe weather and also more heavy rainfall. So this time across Father's Day weekend, this will be centered across portions of the upper peninsula of Michigan, the Badger state of Wisconsin, back here into the Hawkeye state of Iowa, into portions of Minnesota, into South Dakota, Nebraska, and even parts of Kansas, while the heat will really start to build across the southeast, and we see no rain as we go into Father's Day weekend over there. Moving into next week, we really don't see much of a pattern change outside of the heat just continuing to build across the eastern 2/3 of the country between that Monday, June 17th and Friday, June 21st time frame. And that trough out west will get a little bit stronger and dig a little bit further to the south towards California, towards Nevada, Utah, and northwestern Arizona. So that means more cooler air out west and more heat building, especially for the Ohio Valley as we go through much of the next work week. And that ring of fire pattern will continue early next week. Look at the strong jet stream over top of that heat. That continues into the middle of next week and late next week as well. And almost late next week, the heat dome gets a little too strong to where it almost builds that jet stream all the way up here into Canada. So that means the storm track will be shifting well to the north here. And you can see that where the greens are showing up here across the northern plains like the Dakotas, into Nebraska, Minnesota, Wisconsin, into Iowa, through Michigan, and even southeastern Canada like Ontario and Quebec here. We could be seeing some very wet weather, maybe some rounds of severe storms, while the southeast underneath that ridge of high pressure and the heat dome will remain dry as we go into much of next week. We are watching some tropical moisture into the Bay of Campeche as we go into next week. That could spread some moisture into eastern Mexico and coastal Texas and Louisiana. We'll keep a very close eye on that, but no significant development expected for that. And speaking of the tropics, let's look at the National Hurricane Center's 7-day tropical outlook, and they do have a 20% chance of development with a system just west of Florida. We'll move over Florida with all that rainfall we were showing you that could see 10 to 15 inches of rain, all that moisture moving over Florida, and could develop something off of the Carolina coast here, but this would be steered away from the United States, so not really a big impact outside of any rainfall there for Florida. Then as we go into the eastern Pacific Ocean, so far, great news, nothing happening over the next 7 days. So again, very quiet over here in the eastern Pacific Ocean as well. Thank you all for watching. If you like today's weather forecast, give it a thumbs up down below. Consider subscribing to the channel. We'll keep you covered. A new video forecast will be out for you tomorrow. Leave any comments, questions, and concerns below. Get to those later on today, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their Tuesday out here.